It's hard to even believe that all those circumstances that was involved. When you have three Bigfoots and you have three people on each side, all the way from that point, and then the point where my sister and her boyfriend decided to go crawling out in the grass, and then left me there visualizing just two other figures sitting there. I just can't believe how that even happened. I didn't even see them come up and they got themselves in that position in the first place. Those two of the Bigfoots that were sitting there. But then the two other brothers, they suggested that we should go to the police department. Me and my brother, we were so soft-spoken ourselves anyways, and like I said, we don't like any confrontational type situation. We don't like going to the police, especially if you go to the police department and tell them that we just saw three Bigfoots playing in the playground. It ain't gonna happen for us.
Curtis, thanks for joining me on Bigfoot Crossroads.
Yes.
Take us back to 1983.
Yeah. So let me start out with I got an identical twin brother. So without him being involved, and there's also two other individuals that witnessed these creatures at the same time that I did, and there's actually three Bigfoots all together.
Oh wow.
So I assume that there's like a family of three, but without them, or actually the other two individuals were just kids that we had met and we have since haven't really kept in touch with them anyways. But so basically, it's just me and my brother that can verify with each other of what we saw. But anyways, so back in '83, we were living in the town of Wairika, California, and that town is it's located about 10 miles from the Oregon border, and it also sits right at the east side, right at the bottom of the mountain. But it's right there at the Klamath National Forest.
Oh, okay.
That's in Northern California. And it's right there along the side of the Interstate 5. If you know anything about California, there's an Interstate 5 that runs all the way from Mexico all the way up to Canada.
Yeah,
and it goes right straight up to the center of all the California, Oregon, and Washington, right to Canada. So, anyways, back in Wairika, like I said, you got the mountains right there. That's that whole mountain range right there, just from Wairika. If you're going west, it's just nothing but forested, just thick forest, and there's like small communities that spread out on this whole mountain range, but there's no towns of any kind that I can remember up that way, and it's all just big, thick forests. And there's like just the national forest itself, right there at Klamath National Forest. That's like 1.7 million acres right there. But,
wow.
But that whole mountain range is other. It connects with other national forests and everything. You got the Marble Mountains, and you also got the Trinity National Forest, and you also have the Six Rivers National Forest, which is also, that's where what do you call it, Bluff Creek.
Yeah,
which is where the Gimbin film, the film site was made, right there on Bluff Creek. If everybody knows what that one is, the Patterson Gimbin film.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, so that's not, and as the crow flies from Wairika, it's only about 70 miles. If you're looking right straight over the hill from where Wairika's at. So we're on the same mountain range, and basically Siskiyou County. I just named because I've been doing some research at that whole Siskiyou County and Wairika area. It's got the most sightings in California. Probably because of the whole forested, that whole forest and everything.
Yeah.
And then over, if you're looking way over the coast, towards the coast, there's also the redwoods. So that's pretty thick over there too. It's pretty nice. But now back in Wairika, in 1983, my twin brother and I we were 15 years old, and first of all, we moved around a lot. Our dad was a cook, and so through our whole childhood, we were moving constantly. We moved from town to town. We we're talking about at least once or twice a year we'd move. We didn't stay in one school no more than a year at the very most. And then we also moved sometimes, two or three times a year. That's how much traveling we've done and lived all over California and Oregon. So now, like I said, in '83, we came from Oregon to come back into California. And our aunt was living in Wairika. Well, we already knew where Wairika was too. We've always been there. We'd stop in to get gas there, but we'd never, anytime we're traveling back and forth to Oregon and California, we'd always stop there to get gas every time we were doing our traveling. But our aunt happened to just end up living there. And she was there maybe about a year or so before we actually arrived. And so this is the first time we actually got to go to Wairika and stay there. But our parents dropped us, me and my brother, and along with our two younger siblings, dropped us off at our aunt's. So my mom and dad can travel around California to try to find a place to live. Even though they did come back to Wairika anyways a couple months later, we ended up living in Wairika.
But at this time, you were just staying with your aunt.
Yeah, we're still with my aunt.
Okay.
Now, the main part of town of Wairika is basically right there along the freeway, the I-5, where all the stores and restaurants and everything else, and the population of the whole town is like 3,500 people at the time. And then where my aunt was living was in an apartment complex, and that was about 2 blocks west of the main part of town there, and it's just a small residential neighborhood. But the apartment complex is right next door to a grade school, and the grade school is grade 1 through 5. So it's got mostly just small kids there.
Yeah.
And of course, this was the summertime anyways. And I only mentioned the school because this is actually the place where we actually had our encounter. So that's why I got to describe what the school and everything around where we were at and everything. Now, where the apartment complex and the school in between each other, there's no fence line at all. There's no fence that separates the two properties. And but the front of the apartment suite was facing the opposite direction of where the school is at, which is the north side of the school is on the north side of the apartment complex. So for us to get into the schoolyard, we just have to go around the back side or the side of the apartment complex to go just walk right through the field to get into the school. And on the whole western side of that of the school property was a big 8 to 10 foot chain link fence that went all the way up and down north and south in that whole perimeter, and that's where the soccer / baseball field was located. Now, then on the very north corner, basically of the school grounds, the northwest corner is where the baseball diamond's at, and then right on connected to the 8-foot fence was a man gate, so you can walk through that. But on the other side of that fence, we were looking towards the mountains. Now you're looking towards the west. There's just a big empty, piece of property that's owned by the city, and it's just it's undeveloped, and that covered quite a few acres. But it went from a school. It was about 300 or 400 yards, just nothing but just dry grass and a lot of weeds, tall weeds, like 3-foot weeds, and then all that whole perimeter was just had a whole bunch of rolling dirt mounds basically, and it's very unstable area. And it's also got a lot of shrubbery and everything, pretty thick shrubbery in some spots.
So the city wasn't keeping it up or anything?
No, not that particular part of the property. There's Yeah, so I don't know, but they did recently. I went there about 5 years ago myself, and I can see that whole community is just all it's all housing, it's all community now.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you know if it's changed a lot since then.
Oh yeah, I try to go back and I try to look at the area that I seen my Bigfoot and everything. And yeah, it's totally different. So, anyways, yeah. So then beyond that field, like I said, about 400 yards is just there was just a little residential neighborhood, one street up there that's right next to the bottom of the steep slope that goes up towards the mountains, into the mountains. So so basically from the apartments to the mountains is probably a couple blocks away from us is all it was. But it's pretty easy travel coming through there. See, now we first got to the town. We met a couple of brothers. Me and my brother. We didn't know anybody. We just go down to the park in town there, and we ended up meeting a couple of brothers there, and they're the same age as we were, so they were the ones we were hanging out with, and we only knew them for a couple of days by the time when this incident happened. We also have my younger sister who ended up having a little thing with a kid that was about 2 years older than me and my brother. My sister was only 13, and this kid was like 17. So, anyways, they're kind of a short term had a short term thing going on, but they were both also with us in this particular encounter. So now we move forward to the day that this happened, and it was in the middle of summer, and so it was very hot. It was actually we had like a drought going on at the time, and the temperature was definitely was all. I remember days that were about 110 degrees, and so anywhere from 100 to 110 degrees. So it was very warm out. And even on this particular day, we stayed in most of the time because it's so hot out. So anyway, now the two brothers came to the apartment complex where we were staying with my aunt. We already ate dinner. It was already getting dark anyways. The sun was already going over, and we were already expecting the two brothers to show up anyways. So they showed up after dinner. And it was already getting dark out, and it was very bright with stars and everything. So it was pretty bright in that aspect. And then so we were outside talking with the brothers and everything. And then so one of the brothers decided they wanted to play a game. They wanted to play a game of what we call duns, but it's mostly like a hide and go seek. We had a one team of three and the other team of three, which was my team. So yeah, so me and my bro, we're not usually even at this particular time in our life, we like playing those kind of games, but we decided to do it because the two brothers just were pretty insistent on wanting to do something. So that's what we decided to do. So now we had my sister and her boyfriend join in with us, and like I said, now me and my twin brother, we were the team captains because nobody wanted us to be on the same team together,
Right.
So anyways, so now I ended up having my sister and her boyfriend on my team, and then my brother had the other two brothers on his team. So now we got three on our team. So basically, I won the coin toss to where we got to go hide first. So it was up to my brother's team to be searching for us. And when I say guns, we just had fake, we just used our fingers, to shoot.
Right.
That's basically what our premises was going to be, just to act like we're going to shoot each other. But we didn't really have a real good plan. It was more like a hide and go seek type of game, So it's kind of a little bit different than what I thought we were going to do. But anyways, now my brother had to count down. My brother's team had to count down from 100, so that would give my team enough time to get some distance away. So the old kind of rules that we came up with is that we couldn't go. We had to stay within the school property or over on the other side of that fence where the city property's at. on the other side of the screw property. So that was the only real rules we had. We didn't have anything else set up. We just had the other team going to be looking for us. So now my brother's team started counting down, and then we just went at my team. We just went around the other side where the screw was at, and just ran around the over to the other side, and we ran all up to where the northwest corner of the screw was. And that's where the baseball diamond was at. So there's a little 4-foot fence right there that runs along that north perimeter of the screw property. But all we had to do is jump over that real quick. And so my team just went and laid down right behind the baseball diamond. And like I said, there's the man gate right behind us also, right there on that chain link fence. So now at this point, I didn't know exactly where my brother's team was at. We were hiding, and then, like I said, and it was bright enough. The lights from the stars was pretty bright. It gave us so we could actually see the field pretty decently,
Yeah.
But anything that's walking around, if you just see like a shadowy type figures, because it wasn't that light out. But we could also see from the baseball diamond, we could see the apartment complex that had lights from there. And then behind the screw, where the kids' school, the playgrounds that had some lighting there, and we can also see the street lights on the other side of both the apartments and the school there. So there was a little bit of light. Wasn't like good enough to where you could see details or anything. But now my brother's team is actually located right basically on the school grounds, but right next to the right next to the apartment complex, which is basically diagonal from where we were at. We were, estimating maybe 150 feet, maybe, or something like that, just as an estimate. So now when these creatures showed up, it took a while because we were sitting there. My team was laying down behind that baseball diamond for, I would say, at least 4 or 5 minutes, because we were waiting for the other team because they're supposed to be looking for us. And I'm not sure why my brother decided to just hold off. They were just kicking back, I guess, but they're also laid down in the grass as well. So basically, like I said, about 5 minutes goes by, but now my brother's team, they were the first ones that got to see these Bigfoots come into the picture, because those Bigfoots were right there on the side of the school, right in between the school and that complex, the apartment complex. There's no lighting right there in that particular section because it's right there on the side of the school, so it's kind of dark right there.
Yeah.
But there's a street right there. There's like an access road right next for the school workers. It's right next to the school. It's basically in between the school and the apartment complex. But that's where the Bigfoots came walking out of. They came walking, and they were heading towards the field and towards that chain link fence. And as they were walking, they were walking about 10 or 15 feet apart from each other. And like I said, there's 3 of them. So now they're walking in front of my brother. They're looking. My brother and his team are looking at these figures walking in front of them, and none of my brother or his team, they didn't want to say nothing. They just sat there and watched these creatures just walk in front of them. They're probably about 50 feet in front of where my brother and them were laying down. They let them walk by, but they kind of went to a little bit of a shock and everything. And they really couldn't believe what they were looking at. But they didn't say anything because they didn't want to draw attention to watching these creatures walk in front of them like that. It wasn't until the Bigfoots got all the way down and got within 10 or 15 feet from the fence, when they actually looked at each other and started. They started whispering to each other. One of the brothers said, "Hey, that's Bigfoot," and that's it. That's all it was. And they all agreed for sure that that's exactly what they were looking at. Was Bigfoot. There's 3 of them, and their estimated size of these were, some were they're definitely over 6 feet, because the 2 brothers were like 6 feet tall themselves, and they pretty much said that that these Bigfoots were even taller than they were. So that's my understanding there. But we also came to a conclusion later on that they were probably the juveniles of Bigfoot.
Yeah.
After analyzing all the stuff that we were thinking about after the fact. But meanwhile, when my brother's team watched these Bigfoots get to the actual that fence, like I said, this fence is at least 8 feet. I for some reason think it's like almost 10 feet tall, but because I've climbed that fence before myself, and I was 5'7" myself, but it just seems like 8 foot wouldn't be that big of a deal. But I remember having to crawl up the fence before. It seemed like it was about 10 feet tall, but it's anywhere from 8 to 10. So that's a lot better to think of it that way, I guess. So basically, when these Bigfoots got to the fence, the biggest one out of the 3 Bigfoots that were there, all he did is, he or she, I can't really tell you which one it was, but all it did is just grab grabbed a hold of the top of the fence and just yank itself up and just threw itself on the other side of just over the other side to the property of the city.
Wow.
While the other two Bigfoots, they just walked right back down the fence line back towards the apartment complex property line there, and then the fence just stops right there at the property line anyways. And all you have to do is just walk right around the fence, and then you're back. And then you're in that the undeveloped piece of property there, and that's basically what my brother had seen. Now in my situation, I will go back to where I was at. We were behind there. I started to fall asleep a little bit. I dozed off anyways. But when those Bigfoots came into started crossing where my brother was at, my sister nudged me, and kind of woke me up. And the boyfriend, he was right there too. He actually said, "Hey, there's the other team, that's coming up." So basically, I wiped my eyes off and everything, and definitely, we could definitely see the silhouettes walking across the field of them. Like I said, we were probably at least 100 feet away from them. So we didn't see any details or anything out of them. And at this point in time, we're just, as far as I'm concerned, it was my brother's team, right? I mean, like, you got 3 Bigfoots walking, but in my own, I'm not thinking Bigfoot definitely was not on my radar whatsoever. So why would I be thinking about a Bigfoot,
Yeah.
And so, like I said, and the detail there was not enough detail for me to even consider that fact. So we watched them walking across going into the baseball field, basically, heading right straight towards the fence, but not really paying attention. I wasn't like staring at them or anything like that, but I could definitely visualize them walking across. And so now my sister's boyfriend decided he wanted to get up and just start blasting away, with our gun fingers, And I said, no, I don't want to do that because we're too far away. So I suggested that we just go ahead and just get ourselves on the other side of the fence, even not knowing if that's what they were planning on doing anyways. We didn't know if those figures were going to jump over the fence, but at least we'll be on the other side of the fence. And if those figures came walking down towards us, if they stayed on the school grounds, we'd still be right there on the other side of the fence, and we could start blasting away if they came up to us. But it turns out that they're on the other side anyways, which we didn't know. And like I said, my brother told me that that one Bigfoot jumped over the chain link fence. Now we were crawling through that fence at pretty much the same time that those Bigfoots got to the fence anyways, and I'm holding on to the fence, and I don't hear nothing. I don't hear the fence rattle, because normally if you're going to crawl on a chain link fence, you're going to hear something. You're going to hear it rattle. You're going to feel it,
Yeah,
and all that stuff. So I guarantee that whatever, if that's what they did, that one jumped over the fence. It just did it in one fast loop. It just went up there and just grabbed a hold of it, and then somehow just flung itself over the other side without making a noise, And then they probably had that they're probably that agile anyways, where they can do that kind of stuff. They're probably used to doing that. So like I said, we crawled to the other side through that man gate we just crawled through there, and then we started heading down south along that fence line, basically towards the center of the field there, but over on the property side, the property of the city, and we kind of did it kind of slow because we didn't want to make any noise. We didn't, because eventually they're going to either come to us and we're going to have an element of surprise no matter what. But we didn't really want to draw too much attention to it at that particular time. So we get down there. Finally, we get down. That took a few minutes or whatever, but we get to the about center of the field of the fence line, and that's where we decide to stay. We decided to sit right there because that's about the same place where we've seen these Bigfoots come up to the fence. Or in my case, I thought it was the other team. So we just put our backs against the fence and just started looking towards the mountains, in that direction, basically. The same direction going towards that little the residential neighborhood, like I said, about 400 yards away. And right down below us, we're up on a little bit, the fence line was at a little bit of the slope, so it goes down about maybe 2 or 3 feet before you're on that other piece of property. And there's a lot of ruts in the ground and stuff. There's very uneven property. And then right just a little bit to the left of us, there's a pretty big, thick piece of brush. So something could hide behind there, of course. But that was one of the areas that we didn't want to go past, and we just wanted to kind of because we could still see down the fence line. The fence line was still pretty clear. We could still crawl down that way if we wanted to, but we had that brush right there, so that was kind of helping us with a little bit of shelter for ourselves. Now, we sat there. Now, at this point, my sister and her boyfriend, they were kind of getting bored of the game, and they were showing some signs that they're more into each other, basically.
Right.
So they're kind of giggling and stuff, and I was kind of getting a little bit agitated at this point in time. And I kept telling them to be quiet because I didn't want them to. I didn't want our team to get discovered, So we were sitting there for a couple of minutes, but then finally, my sister and the boyfriend decided they wanted to go crawling out in the grass, and and I was more than happy. I just said, okay, just go ahead and go. I was just getting away from me was what I wanted them to do, because they're just giggling and stuff, anyways. Not real loud, but just giggling enough to where it'd give us away. So when they started crawling through the grass, and there was about 3 foot weeds and grass and everything, I wasn't really paying attention to my sister and the boyfriend. I didn't know exactly which way they were headed or anything. All I know is that I lost sight of them once they crawled into the grass, and they're still giggling and stuff. So it was just enough where I can hear them pretty good, It was still a little bit noisier than I really wanted them to be, but I kept trying to tell them to be quiet a little bit, more like a kind of a louder whisper, I guess. Anyway, so I just sat there, and this whole time, all I was doing is just scoping, scanning my head back and forth, all the way from looking down the fence line and then going all the way and just scanning all the way back down from where we came from, and scanning all that property. Anyways, so after a few minutes, it was probably about 2 minutes later, and my sister and them, they're still in the grass somewhere. But as I was coming around and then from the looking north, basically, and then coming around to look back down the fence line again, now I see 2 figures about 20 feet away from me that were squatted on one of those grassy dirt mounds that I was telling you about. It's only maybe a foot or 2 high, but at this point, I just, in my mind, it was my sister. It was my sister and her boyfriend. So I could see the silhouettes, looking, just looking straight at me.
Yeah.
At this point, there wasn't a lot of light, but I could see there's lights coming from the neighborhood, like I said, quite a few yards away. And there's, and of course, the starlights and everything. So I could definitely see that there's 2 figures there. Plus, they were right next, like I said, it's 20 feet away, but they're right next to that brush, that thick brush I was telling you about. So maybe that was a place where they just came out of, but I didn't see them arrive at all. So that's why it all came to, it wasn't even a surprise at that time, because it was as far as I was concerned, that was my sister and her boyfriend. Even though later I can definitely I can look back and I can remember that these two figures were just sitting there, just staring straight at me, didn't make any move, wasn't moving at all. Even though, like I just kept scanning back and forth, anyways, and every once in a while, about every couple, I don't know, 15, 20 seconds, I'd be looking at those two, and I'd raise my hand up and try to tell those two figures to stop, to stop giggling and stuff, stop making noise.
Yeah.
So basically, I was having interaction with these two figures, even though it wasn't a communication part of it, but they recognized me, even though I didn't know exactly what I was looking at the time, but it was still considered an interaction, I guess you'd say, because they knew where I was. Now, my sister and them, they were definitely crawled up. They were definitely close enough so that when they were, when my sister and her boyfriend were still giggling and stuff, it was still close enough to where that the sound was just, to me, was close enough to those two figures that I still thought that's what they were. That was my sister or boyfriend. So they were only a matter of whatever amount of feet, so many feet away. They're definitely even closer than what I was. I mean, I was 20 feet away.
So they were between you and two figures, but you didn't realize that.
Yeah, or they're more of, I don't think. Yeah, my sister and they were actually more to the a little bit more to the right.
Okay.
Where I'm looking straight, and then those two figures were a little bit just right off at an angle, just slightly to the left of me, and my sister and them, because they were sitting on the right of me anyways. They just went straight out, and as far as I was concerned, they were just went straight out. Because I wasn't paying attention to exactly which direction they started to head, but that was my estimated figures, that they just went straight out, and they were probably within, by the time they got well out into that thick brush or the thick weeds and everything, that they were probably within 10 feet from those two figures themselves.
Wow.
Without them even knowing it, because they didn't know that I was that, because all they could do, all my sister and them could do is just hear me just trying to whisper back, tell them to be quiet, even though it wasn't doing any good. So meanwhile, the battle goes on for another 2 or 3 minutes. I'm still just scanning my head around back and forth, and then all of a sudden I'm doing my turn back, starting to look towards the south along that fence line, and now I see something come running out behind the bush from that thick brush it ran actually. It was about another 5 feet behind the other two that were sitting on that mound. And that thing, it was coming pretty fast. That thing was so fast. I look back at it, I know it was pretty fast, but at the time it was happening, it was everything was happening so fast. But it's not that I got scared or anything, because I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't even looking for Bigfoot or anything, so I wasn't scared of anything at this time. I just thought it was my brother's team. I thought it was one person from the other team, and I couldn't tell which one I thought it was. I just knew it was the other team. Still thinking that those other two that were sitting on the mound was my sister and her boyfriend. But either ways, those two figures didn't even budge anyways. Even when that one came running around behind the other two, those two figures just stayed right exactly where they were. Now, so that creature that he running around those other two, that was at least 25 to 30 feet from where I was at. And like I said, everything happened so fast, so I'm thinking, okay, it's the other team. And even before I can even get on my feet, that creature went completely around those two and was already almost to a stop by the time I got on my feet to start yelling and start saying that it was the other team. Pretty much about the same time I got up and started yelling, it's the other team. That Bigfoot, that's when the Bigfoot stopped. We're talking 10 feet from me, because I already went past those other two, and that was actually just stopped within 10 to maybe 12 at the most, but it stopped right there, and then it was just sitting there. It just stood there and looked at me, and it tilted its head. From where I was at, it tilted to the left side, but it was on its right side. Tilted its head like it was trying to communicate, or it was almost like it was curious of me. There was nothing aggressive about what he was doing or it was doing. But all I know is it tilted its head to one side, and it was slightly bent in the knees, and it was kind of and it had like the back was arched a little bit facing forward as well. But the thing I could definitely see out of this whole creature was I could see the hair going all the way from the head, and it was going right all the way down the shoulders, and I could see part of the arms. And the arms were going down into the shadows where I couldn't see the full length of the arms. I could see the individual hairs coming all the way down around its shoulders, and it was either going to be it was definitely short-haired type of a thing, because I could see the individual hairs, but it wasn't like long hair. I didn't see any long hairs coming from the arms or anything, but I could see the actual individual hairs coming down the shoulders. And the one thing I did notice, it was quite a bit wider than me, so I knew it was quite a bit bigger. But still, at this time, and this was going on. This went for about 3 seconds when I decided to start blasting away. I started just going bang, 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 bang. After I yelled out, it was the other team, and I just yelled out top of my lungs. So basically, I wasn't even at this time. It was just the other team to me. Just the one Bigfoot.
Yeah, hadn't registered.
Yeah, this hadn't registered. My mind just even though I could definitely see something was definitely wrong. I was still set on just my adrenaline was already going, because I just wanted to shoot the other team. So now I'm just banging my fingers away, banging away, and then now at that point, the other two that were sitting on that dirt mound, they stood up, and then I knew that there's something wrong. I was going, okay, something's definitely not right here, because anyways. But those two got up, and then they all just turned around, all three of them. They just started leaping away from me, heading towards the hills and towards that little residential neighborhood a ways away. And I could see they were just leaping. They were leaping through the tall grass. So at this time, now I go into kind of a shock, because the only thing that was coming out of my mouth at that point, I just started yelling out deer. I just started yelling deer for whatever, just because I can only think of the reason I was doing it, because of the way they were leaping through the grass, knowing that these were definitely not deer, because they were on two legs for sure. Just they're definitely human form, but at the same time, I definitely didn't think of them as being human either, So it was definitely going to be between a human and whatever it was at this time in my mind. I just couldn't register what was going on. I was confused, and I'm just yelling deer. Now I was yelling that so loud too, is like my brother can hear me from way back in the apartment complex. Because like I said, my brother and them, they got scared anyways. And they retreated back into the apartment complex. But when they heard me yelling, I think they were afraid of what was happening to me. They probably were afraid later on. Of course, they said they were afraid that maybe that those Bigfoots were attacking me or whatever. So they came running across the field from the apartment complex. And, let's keep moving forward where I was at. Anyway, so I could still see these figures. Like I said, they're leaping away from me. And then, of course, I stopped shooting eventually. But I can still see them. They'll be looking around. They actually slowed down. They just came to kind of more like a faster walk, but they're just with wide strides, I guess you'd say. And I can see them looking back at me. They just turn their upper torsos. They just be looking back at me. These big figures. And so I was still confused. I was just like, I couldn't believe what I was looking at. I didn't want to believe in Bigfoot, because I just didn't want to think of Bigfoot, because I didn't know anything about Bigfoot except stories and stuff. But meanwhile, my sister and her boyfriend finally were standing next to me, which I didn't even notice until later on. And they could see these figures as well, but they're still too far away. They were probably about 50 or 60 yards away, no matter what, maybe 100 feet or whatever. But we could see them. We were watching them, and so my sister and her boyfriend, they definitely could not identify them as being Bigfoot at all, because as far as what we can look at where we were standing, they were just upright, bipedal whatever, persons or whatever. But anyway, so meanwhile, I can hear my brother come running across the field. I'm right there. I'm at the fence, and I'm still confused. I'm still in shock, I guess you'd say. So I turn around. I'm holding onto the fence, and I can see my brother's team running up to the fence line. And I could hear them yelling something, but they didn't. Nothing. I couldn't hear anything until they got to me. It was probably within about 10 feet from them getting to the fence, and they're running pretty fast. But all I can hear is my brother just yell out that they saw a Bigfoot. And once they said that, that's when everything totally changed in my whole life up to this point. And I mean, it's hard to even explain about how scared a person can be. I mean, because I've been scared. I've had bear encounters myself in my adulthood. I've had 5 different close encounter basically with bears, black bears in California, because I do a lot of hiking. But after this incident, I have never felt anything as scared as I've ever been before that incident, and more after. It's one of those experiences it's one thing I've never ever wanted to feel that same fear ever in my life, but I was so scared. I went into a deep shock, and I was probably my heart was getting ready to just pounce out of my chest. It's just the fact that my brother said that they saw a Bigfoot, the name Bigfoot right there. That was it. It's just, I lost almost everything. And somehow I end up on, my brother told me that I just almost pretty much just jumped over the fence. I mean, as fast as I could, I just grabbed a hold. I just used my hands and pretty much just a couple strides up the thing and grabbed and just jumped over the other side. And I left my sister and her boyfriend right there, and I don't even know how they got over. But the only memory I had after that, once he said Bigfoot, because I went totally blank. I didn't even know what I was doing. All I know is that I remember being about halfway down the field of the soccer field, and I think I got to the other side, and I just fell to my knees finally. I fell to my knees because I can see my hands and everything, and I remember rubbing my eyes. I had tears just coming out of my eyes like crazy because that's how scared I was. It was the worst thing. It was the worst thing I ever had. But when you look back on it, I know for a fact that there was nothing aggressive about it. These creatures. It's just that I had this thought of a Bigfoot as being just a folklore monster or whatever. It was just something that so basically my fear only came out of what I thought happened. Not what is gonna happen later. I mean, I was just total fear of what I thought could have actually really happened if they really wanted to do something to me.
Yeah.
So, like I said, it was the most scared thing I've ever had my whole life, and I never had anything that scary. Matter of fact, every time I've had any kind of any encounter of any kind, like I said, the bears are the only thing that I've ever came close to that could have resembled any kind of fear. But with the blackbirds in California, after that incident, everything it just pales compared to that feeling I had. So to me, looking at a bear was like nothing to me. I felt at ease because at least I know what a bear is.
Yeah.
So,
did you lose that feeling of fear as you got older, or did it stay with you?
As far as that whole situation, I've actually come to terms with all that. That whole situation, that fear lasted for at least weeks upon that. Yeah, I didn't even want to go outside at night at all for quite a while. But when time goes by, a couple months goes by, we end up living in Wairika anyways, and we went to high school there. And we actually stayed in that town for about 5 or 6 years. We lived around the areas. We still moved from like trailer park to trailer park and all that stuff, in the apartment complexes and everything else. But we still lived in the area, and there's little community towns within 5-10 miles away that we actually moved out, like farm country area too. But still, Wairika was our main hub, and we went to high school there. for a couple of years. So like I said, the fear actually kind of left because we met up with other friends. After that time, we had a couple other friends that we actually were hiking up in the mountains with ourselves. We can hike right up from that apartment complex we were at. The side road right there on the south side goes right up to a cemetery, and it's only a couple blocks away. And it goes right up to just before you go into the mountains.
Mm.
All you gotta do is walk through the cemetery, and you just jump over a little fence right there, and there's a pathway that just goes right up to the top of to the grade, and it comes up to about a 200-foot elevation gain by the time you get to the top of the ridge up there. But then you can just walk towards the north of the top of that mountain up there, and then there's an overlook. You can overlook and you can see the whole town. And we can see where you can see the apartment complex, and you see the school and everything from right where we're at. Even though it looks like a bunch of little ants and stuff looking at it from where we're at, but you can also see the freeway. You can see the I-5, and you can see the rest of the town right next to it. And you can also see Mount Shasta. Mount Shasta is only about 30 miles to the southeast of town. From up on the ridge there, you can see that pretty good. And it's kind of flat up there anyways. Everything east of town and everything is kind of more flat. There's no mountains to really you can see except for that Mount Shasta. And so being up there, we were up there about a couple of years after this happened. So I felt comfortable being up in the mountains anyways, because we do a lot of hiking and camping anyways. But standing up on that ridge, me and my brother would just imagine what the Bigfoot we're looking at.
Yeah.
And of course they must have been doing this kind of stuff for years anyways. Maybe not going into town all the time, whatever, because I still haven't found anybody saying that they'd go down on the outskirts of town like that, but it definitely happened to us, for whatever reason. And like I said, I believe that these were probably juveniles, and they're probably curious, and of course they know what a school is, so I'm sure they've been up there on that top of the ridge looking down on the. They know that there's kids that play in that playground all the time, so they knew the path. So they probably must that same exact pathway to get over at least towards that side of the school. I don't know where they are hanging out. Anywhere past that school or not going into town, because right there about a block or two away is right there. There's an alley behind there's like a bunch of stores and restaurants and stuff. There's an alley where they got these big bins, big trash bins where they throw away old food and stuff. Like there's a donut shop there. They throw food away, like day old donuts or whatever. They got a pizza place over there. So. And this is just pure theory that they might have just went down there to be looking through the trash cans or whatever, but that's just my own personal theory.
I would say that's a pretty solid theory, actually.
Yeah, and the thing was, like I said, there was a drought going on, so that's the reason why that even I brought that up, because even while we were there, even afterwards, we already knew reports of other wildlife coming down into town that normally wouldn't come down in town. There's definitely a lot of deer would come down for sure. Coyotes were known to come down, and whatever else up there, but mostly deer and stuff that you normally wouldn't see come down in town like that. But so we heard reports about like that. So I kind of figured that maybe those even if those creatures are coming down, they're probably trying to figure out a way to eat also, find something, So that's basically where I'm at with that,
I mean, so where I live in Oklahoma, stories of Bigfoot coming into towns, areas like you're talking about, that's just like kind of on the edge of town where it dumps out into the wilderness or whatever. And them coming in and raiding dumpsters, hanging around schools, being seen by kids at school. playing baseball, like you're right there on the baseball. I mean, everything that you're talking about, even down to the cemetery, are like common things that people tell stories about encountering Bigfoot.
Yeah, it's just and even to this day, even me and my well, first of all, me and my brother, this happened, we talked about it probably within that year, but then we just stopped talking about it altogether after that. We just decided, okay, that was it. And then over the years, we never really talked about it. But um, we always we were pretty shy about telling people. Anyways, we were shy kids. We were always moving around, so we didn't have any friends. We just had to make friends every time we moved. So we ended up being kind of shy because we moved around so much and going to different schools.
Well, I was going to ask you, like, did you, being kids and all, did you talk to other kids about it later on?
Oh yeah, no. After this incident, even when we were back at that time when I was going through my episode when I was in the middle of that field at night, probably 8 or 9 or not at night, we sat around. We just sat around in a circle. Eventually, because I was in shock I was in shock so bad that I couldn't even function. I couldn't even really speak of anything for about a half an hour to 45 minutes later. So we decided to sit around, and of course I'm facing in the circle. I'm facing towards the fence because because I'm the one that had the most traumatic out of all of us. I had the worst about all of us. So we started talking about it instantly. We compared stories with each other. Of course, I was the last one to finally get to say something because I was able to finally say something. But then we came to the conclusion that the two other brothers, they suggested that we should go to the police department, right?
Yeah.
And me and my brother this is already probably an hour into already what happened. So the situation was already done with. And besides that, me and my brother, we were so soft spoken ourselves, anyways, and like I said, we don't like any confrontational type situation. We don't like going to the police for just random stuff like that. Especially if you go to the police department and tell them that we just saw 3 Bigfoots playing in the playground. It ain't gonna happen for us because me and my brother has enough sense that. First of all, we just got to that town within just days, within 3 days to a week, whatever it was. It was a pretty quick evolution that happened. But for us to show up in a town where nobody knows us, and then here we are talking about a Bigfoot story, me and my brother just don't want to have that type of attention.
Yeah, not starting out great.
Yeah, not at all. So, and me and my brother, even at 15, we had a lot of common sense. And we pretty much talked to the other brothers too. It wasn't that hard to talk to them. Just say, hey, it's not worth it. All you're gonna do is invite all of us to be ridiculed, basically. So that's basically what happened. We just all decided, okay, yeah, we're not gonna say anything. That's it. And then with those 2 brothers, what's funny about them is that we knew them for a few days at that point in time, and we also went to school with them in high school. But after that night, once they went home and we went back to our into the apartment and stuff, we never hooked back up with these guys again. We seen them. We weren't enemies. We were still friendly to them and stuff, but we didn't become like best friends with them at all.
Yeah.
We never talked to them about the situation. It was just for whatever reason. Once we separated, the Bigfoot kind of thing just stopped. We just didn't talk about it. We definitely didn't talk about it while we were in school. And anybody else, except when we did go back to the apartment complex that night, we tried to tell my aunt about what was going on. Her and her boyfriend decided, they were just laughing at us, basically, just or joking. I wouldn't say flat out laughing, but they knew that they just thought it was just the fact that we just showed up and that we're just seeing things or whatever, that's all so they were definitely, they definitely didn't believe our story at that particular time. So, yeah. So, and like I said, matter of fact, I didn't even tell anybody about our story, like over 20 something years later, basically. Me and my brother both started working on the ships. We were merchant mariners for 25 years. And, anyways, we were working on the ships, and that's when my brother did, he was even less talkative than myself. I was the most boisterous out of me and him. I'm the one who always liked to talk a little bit, but even though I'm still very reserved and I'm very shy, but I'm just a little bit more vocal than my brother, basically, is where I get that point. But I ended up telling her, I was working on a boat and I had a captain who I told the story to, and he was the first person. And I was probably about 30. I want to say I was probably about 5 or 36, I think, when I told him that story.
So about 20 years later.
Yeah. Yep. And then the only bad thing about that was that my captain, he's one of those guys that he loves stories, and he likes to joke around. He likes to talk a lot. I mean, he when we were talking at first, that subject already came up because he lives in Tahoe, and he was telling me about a lot of his bear encounters and all that stuff. And then for whatever reason, I decided to feel comfortable and just say, well, I got a story to tell you about a Bigfoot. And he seemed to be very interested about it, right?
Yeah.
And I'm telling him the exact same story that I'm telling you. And then at the end of that story, he was pretty excited about it. And he relayed to me that he believed me. But later on, I found out that he didn't know if he believed me or not. Even to this day, I don't know if he believed me. But he knew how much of an honest person I was. So I just can't believe that he could even think that I wasn't telling him the truth. I worked with him for about 15 years, but basically he would be telling the same story, or he would tell a story every time a new person would come in, like a new mate or new deckhand would come in, and I was there for a long time myself. He would always have them go ask me to tell them about the Bigfoot story. I didn't like that because I already felt very self-conscious about telling that story, because it's even to this day, it's embarrassing to tell this story in just to normal people,
Yeah.
I don't like telling. It's an embarrassing subject, just because they're going to look at you kind of weird, So yeah, so basically, I had to tell my story quite a few different times, or at least a few different times. So I kept telling my captain, I don't want him to keep telling people that I've got this Bigfoot story, because it's just, I don't want to have to deal with all that stuff, So that's basically it. But then now we jump up all the way until just basically this last January. That's the first time I actually became more. I actually started telling everybody on Facebook, only because I joined all these groups. I didn't realize that Facebook had all these Bigfoot groups. Group pages. So I started looking into all that stuff, and then I joined about actually a dozen. I picked out 12 different, so I didn't want to just join every one of them. I just joined like the 12 of the most top rated ones that I could see that had the most followers, and so I just started joining all of them. Then I decided to do a word processing, where I just wrote out my whole story. So that way I wouldn't have to repeat the same thing. So I can just go and cut and paste that into the posts. That's it. So I just did it one time. All I do is just cut and paste my same story to all those 24 group posts that I did. And not all of those posts accepted my stories, because some of those posts, they don't allow certain types of stuff, I guess. But majority of my of those groups that I did actually posted my stuff. So, and only a day after that posting, which is like basically right on January 1st is right. It was the first time I posted. And that was the very first day when I got my first person that came that contacted me about a podcast, wanting me to be on their podcast station. So at this point, I didn't even know what a podcast was. I didn't know what a podcast station was. I didn't know anything about a podcast. The only thing I knew until about I didn't even know the term podcast, but I knew Joe Rogan, which I watched him, but I didn't know that was a podcast.
Yeah.
So I didn't know that term. I just know I watched like Joe Rogan.
I mean, you jumped right into the deep end.
Everything happened so it was crazy, because I got Linda Eastburn is the first person that got a hold of me, and I don't know if you know her or not, but she's a researcher herself. But she goes by her name, but she's a podcaster, so it doesn't have like a regular title for her podcast. It's just her name. Yeah, so she contacted me, and I'm going, okay. I had to ask her what it meant. What was a podcast, right? So
Yeah.
So I didn't know what it was, and then she told me what she's all about, and she broadcasts her stuff on the YouTube and everything, because even YouTube I didn't realize had all those podcasts on it, and since then, of course, I've been infatuated with YouTube. That's my main channel, and I've been watching and tons of Bigfoot, documentary type stuff and podcasts. Like I said, like you said earlier, I just jumped myself into not realizing what was going to follow after that, because I ended up doing my eighth podcast.
Wow.
So far at this point, within 7 months since January. And then, of course, one of those podcasts, I actually had me and my brother traveled to it wasn't that far away. It's just a couple hours away from us, but Santa Cruz. There's a radio station, and apparently they do a nighttime program, and it's an actual podcast. So we actually went there, and this is my first time that my brother was actually on with me. So now we both were there. So at least the nice thing with my brother is that he was my witness as well. So he was able to validate exactly everything I was saying, but of course his take on what he saw was at a different vantage point from where I was at.
Yeah.
Which actually gives a lot more credibility to the whole story anyways. Because of course, if me and my brother were sitting on that fence line right next to each other and we see the same thing, then basically we're just both just telling the same exact story,
Yeah.
That's all that. But now that my brother Ray's involved, and being able to validate my story too, and he'll tell his part of the story, it all ties into both of our stories. Basically, it all is the same. It's the same. It was the same encounter, even though my encounter was the one that was the more frightening part of it.
Well, I was going to ask you, with you being the more talkative one, how he felt about you coming forward and sharing the encounter. Has he been supportive and everything?
Well, he was definitely supportive. He was kind of embarrassed, because after I got on, did all these podcasts and stuff, because we both do DoorDashing together, right?
Mm-hmm.
No, not together. He does his DoorDash, and I do my DoorDash. And we lived in a section of town where we had like it's a small community area. We got like pizza places. We got all these different places and then everybody's gotten to know us pretty good. We got our people, the store owners, and we've actually become pretty, people recognize us and they know our names, pretty good. So, and so now that I know these people by name, when I start doing my podcast and stuff, now I'm starting to brag to everybody about my podcast. I've been on podcasts, I've been doing this, and then, going to Santa Cruz. And I've also told them about me going to Seattle to be on on this show that's going to be broadcast here and whatever next year sometime. We'll do the documentary, but now we're almost kind of becoming like a local celebrity type of situation, because I go to this restaurant, a family restaurant, where the owner, he comes, I walk in there, and when I first told him about us, about these podcasts and stuff, he got really into it. And then now, when I was going in there at first, he was getting me to go to all these customers. He'd be walking up to these customers to shake their hands and stuff. This is the guy that I told you about that saw Bigfoot, and to me it was embarrassing. I was still embarrassed. I didn't want that type of attention, especially when it comes to Bigfoot, because then you got a crowd of people in a restaurant, and I don't like crowds anyways. And now we're gonna go back to talking about my brother. My brother is definitely not hip with being the center of attention whatsoever, and he was embarrassed. But but the cat was already out of the bag, and there's nothing I can do about it.
Yeah.
So, but now he's become more into it because now people are starting to. I tell them about all these different podcasts I've been on, and I talk about it a little bit more, but not in groups. I don't like talking in groups, and I get embarrassed when there's too many people around, and so I don't want that kind of attention. I don't want to be known as a celebrity either. I don't want that type of atmosphere. I just want to be just a normal person.
Well, you are a normal person. You're just part of a very select few that have witnessed Bigfoot, and you're becoming the Bigfoot guy of your community.
Yeah, but at the same time, in the back of my mind, I'm just thinking, okay, I hope that people aren't looking at me as like I'm a crazy person, I guess. But yeah, but people know us, that they don't know us personally as far as what we do in our lives or anything, but they do know us because we go into the restaurants and stuff to get the DoorDash food and all that stuff. But so they don't really know us on a personal level as far as where we live and all that stuff. But they know our personalities and they know who we are as me and my brother together.
Yeah.
So people respect us no matter what,
And your brother went with you, I assume, for the television show deal?
Oh, right, yeah. That was a godsend for me too, because because it's one thing if you got one person that has experienced an encounter or whatever, because all that comes out to be is your own story. I mean, you don't have anything to back. You don't have any kind of collaborations of any kind. You don't have validation. You don't have anybody to help confirm what you got. So they particularly like the producers really predicted. They loved our story because of the fact that we were, of course, twins for one thing. Because when they were asking me questions about my about the very first thing through, we're both actually we both had our own interviews separately, so that's going to be all tied into the episode because they're going to be just doing a lot of editing. But so mine came up first, and all the one we would do for the first half an hour or even an hour is to ask me what I felt about my brother. Tell me about Ray. Tell me about Ray. And I'll start talking about Ray, and then I'll start kind of drift off a little bit more. Drift off, and I'll start talking about something else that related to the Bigfoot, right? And then they'd reel me back in, and then they say, "Oh yeah, so tell me about Ray." They did this about 2 or 3 different times, and then I said, but they're real nice to me. They're very friendly, but they definitely calmed me down. The way they were talking, we were just talking like just normal people.
Yeah.
I felt very comfortable with them. And the lady that was the one doing the talking for me with me asked me the questions and stuff. It was just funny. I just got to kind of laughing and stuff. Okay, so we're talking about my brother, but I didn't realize that they were just trying to gather as much information, different things, so they could start blending stuff together. And then, of course, it started. And then I started doing what's nice. They just asked me questions about different parts of my story and stuff. And I pretty much told the whole story. The summer was like I would stop every once in a while. Like, let's say the airplane went by, we'd have to stop, so we were on a break, and I would continue my story. But then they'd go down, and then we want to talk about my childhood. We kind of bounced around a lot through the story, but eventually I did tell the whole story. It's just that they're going to be blending everything together where it all flows into one.
Yeah,
and that includes my brother. So that includes my brother, So, and there's definitely a lot of they definitely brought more of a personality out of both me and my brother, because there's usually things that I usually say is more of a joking manner that I'd usually say to friends and stuff, And I was that loose where I can actually, I had a lot of pretty good comic type of atmosphere going on at different times of my stories and stuff, my analogy of what was going on. And then when they got my brother, even before they got my brother, so my brother was coming up next after my interview. I even warned him. I said, "Okay, this is it. My brother only has like maybe a 5-minute discussion at the most, because first of all, he doesn't like to talk anyways. And my brother, as far as he was concerned, all he wanted to do is just basically just say, hey, I seen 3 Bigfoot coming from my right hand side, And the last time I seen them, they're way over on my left-hand side. And that was it. That's what my brother just wanted to say, kind of like in that aspect of it all, you know.
Yeah.
I said that you're probably, you know, my interview with the production was about 2 hours or so. Now that, and I had to warn them, and I even told them, because I pretty much laid out the line about my brother being a lot more reserved and shy than I am. Even though we're both shy, I was always shy, and I can only have like one or two friends at the most at any given time, and we both shared the same friends, you know. So we didn't like big groups. So yeah. So I already warned him. I said, you're probably the best you're gonna probably get out of him is maybe a half an hour if you pull it out of him. But then I was totally surprised because once my interview ended, they needed to take a break anyways. They came out and they told Ray, yeah, we're gonna get back to you in about another 20 minutes. So it allowed me enough time to talk to my brother and just say, hey, it's because my brother was already nervous. He really didn't even want to be there. Okay. So he's like I said, he wanted to get in and out of there as quick as possible. And he was already mad because it took so long. And now that I'm done, now that I'm relieved that the whole thing was over, for myself, now he knew that he had to come up and start talking. That he didn't, and he was very reserved. But I told him I had to relax him and tell him, hey, it's not what you think. These people are actually very, it's just like you're talking to a friend. And they're just going to be, I told them that they're just going to be bouncing around. They're going to just be asking you questions. So you didn't have to worry about just going and start talking like I do, like a story I just told you. I went through the whole, my whole story, the whole process of the story without being interrupted, of course. But with that production team, they just bounced around and they just asked me questions and stuff.
Yeah.
And so I calmed my brother down. And by the time he got out, his interview took as long as my interview did. And I don't even know exactly how much information they could get out of him because his part of the story was only a matter of just like I said, only a couple of minutes. You know, so I was very surprised that they got whatever information they got out of him. They really did. They wanted to find out a whole bunch of our family upbringing as well, which I came around to that also. So my brother had to tie into, whatever he can remember of our childhood and everything after the fact and what we did for a living and all that stuff. So
I kind of have an advantage as a podcast host whenever I talk to guests and stuff and correspond with them a little bit. And, sometimes, it goes even further after the podcast. I become friends with them and talk to them on a regular basis, and you get to know the people. And the people that have these experiences have stories. They have backgrounds. They're normal people, and a lot of times people just hear the Bigfoot story and that's it. And then they make their judgments going off the story without actually knowing the person. So hopefully this TV show will paint a picture of who you and your brother are as people, and where you came from and everything.
Oh yeah, I believe so. And then, like I said, even with all this research and everything I've done, and I've only done any of the major research I've done has just been the last 7 months, and I didn't even know where that the Patterson-Gimlin film site was even at. I know where the area is at because I've been up there lots of times. I've been through Willow Creek. I've been on a motorcycle rides and stuff, and but I didn't realize that that's where that Gimlin film site was located. And being that close. And then I also guarantee you that even with all this other stuff going on, I could almost guarantee you that there's probably, who knows, 100,000 or more people that have stories, but just choose not to tell the story because they might be people like me that don't want to be ridiculed,
Yeah.
And most of those people, the people that live in the outskirts of town, basically, they're not going to, people are not going to see a Bigfoot walking down the main drag or anything. So you're not living near close to the mountain ranges or whatever, somewhere where the Bigfoots can hide, basically on farmland and stuff, you hear a lot about that too. But most of those people are pretty logical people. They're just, they've seen something for sure, and those people do that live and are planted in certain areas that see these Bigfoot. They seen the same group of Bigfoots all the time. I always thought that when you see a Bigfoot, that was probably going to be the last time you see it. It's just a one-time deal, which is what happened to me. I didn't realize that those people that are living along the edges of the wilderness that frequently see these same creatures, like the same family of creatures, showing up on their properties and stuff, and they have multiple sightings and encounters.
Oh yeah, I mean interactions, or what I call interactions, where you've got certain situations where somebody lives somewhere just in the right spot, and Bigfoot comes on their property or crosses through their property every now and then, and they realize that the Bigfoot aren't a threat, just like you did, and the Bigfoot, more importantly, realizes that person isn't a threat. There's sightings and encounters that go on for years and years, sometimes multiple generations in one family.
Oh yeah, it's just it's crazy. Even like I said, I even found out, of course, that community or the county that I live in has the most amount of reports of Bigfoot out of the whole state of California. Well, basically, that whole mountain range basically has the most amount of reporting of Bigfoots. And some are pretty recent Bigfoots. There's one is right in the Marble Mountains, which is actually even closer than the Patterson-Gimlin. I don't know if you've seen that one where the Boy Scouts seen the Bigfoot here just not very long ago. It's on YouTube.
Yeah. I've seen that. Have you seen? There's a video out there that's pretty popular, or at least it used to be years ago, of I believe it's in Russia. They're speaking a language that sounds Russian or Eastern European of some kind, and they just show a Bigfoot, or what's supposed to be a Bigfoot, but it's jumping like you were talking about. It's like leaping from right to left through the woods.
Yeah, that particular video, I can't recall if I seen that one or not, because I've been watching so many of them anyways. But I definitely seen ones that, like you're explaining, I definitely seen some.
I'll send you a copy of it, because I want to hear your opinion on it.
Okay, yeah, definitely.
Because you are the first person that I've ever talked to that described them leaping.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that either. It was just weird. Yeah. Of course, I attributed that to the fact that they were just leaping over the taller grass and stuff. Anyway,
Yeah.
So it's not going to be a normal thing that maybe other people might have seen too. I didn't really think about what other people, other stories about how they.
Well, everybody has different encounters, so that's fine. I mean, it's just interesting. I definitely want to get your opinion on it.
Yeah, and of course, some people have that real bad smell of a Bigfoot and everything, which I didn't encounter. And the different things like there's no eye shine, no cloaking. It was just, to me, I looked at it as definitely a flesh and blood creature is what I looked at it as. As normal as you and I is what I experienced. I mean, I'm not saying that, and I'm not even going to downplay anybody else's experience, even when it comes to UFOs and all that stuff.
Honestly, if I could give you a bit of advice as somebody that's been around for a really long time in the Bigfoot community, or whatever you want to call it, don't get caught up in all that stuff. You know what your encounter was, and that's the information that you have to add to the puzzle. And people can take it as they want. If they want to argue that that's not how it really happened and you're wrong about this, and it's easy to get caught up in all that. And I sincerely hope that doesn't happen with you.
Oh, it doesn't at all, because even on my Facebook, when I talk to other people on the different groups and everything, and you're always getting people that are just trying to debate me, and I just pretty much shut them down right away. I just say, first of all, I'm not really, I'm already well past the debating stage of my situation, because I'm already a knower anyways. And first of all, I'm not looking for somebody else to validate what I know exists myself. I've already got all that stuff.
Right.
And I'm not even trying I'm not even trying to convince anybody. I just tell my story as it goes. And I also tell them that, really the debunking really falls upon those, that are trying to find the truth themselves, or even, you know, you know, that's basically what I look at it. It's their responsibility to try to find the truth. It's not my responsibility. Like I said, the same thing with you telling me that, or you telling me, you just give them my story, and that's all I can do. That's all cause either ways, this is the first time my story is actually public. It's public now. It's public knowledge. It's recorded, because I did the BFRO just last week. I submitted my whole claim. I did the whole word processing thing and whole story and everything. So, and that's still under review and all this stuff. It's going to take probably months before it gets posted on the BFRO website. And then, it goes from county. It'll go all the way down to all the counties in California for where I was, is what state I pushed on anyways. But so, yeah, so what my story is just another record as far as where I look at it, and it's just another place where they could put a little pin on a map showing that there's a sighting, amongst all the hundreds of thousands of other sightings.
I mean, yeah, in the grand scheme of things, yes, but for you, it's something much more. It's much more than a pinpoint.
Oh yeah, for me, for sure. Like I said, besides that, like I said, he just given my report and everything, but at least that's adding to it. But I've got grandkids too, and I when I did, even before I even started talking to you right now, I didn't mention that I actually, the first thing I did was write a book. I wrote a book of my story, and I published it. Since then, I actually dropped it after a couple of months because I wasn't making any money off of it anyways. But I did. I wrote a book and it published, and I got copies where I autographed it for my grandkids, and I got a copy for my sons and stuff. So if anything else, I haven't told my sons, even if they don't believe me or not, I want my grandkids and I want them to, at least know who I am, or at least what I did, the certain things I did when I was growing up. Whether they think it's true or not, doesn't matter. But either ways, if they do come up with the truth anytime during their lifetime, if they do discover Bigfoot, at least they know that like I said, their grandfather, which would be me, they're gonna say, hey, yeah, my grandfather was one of the Bigfoot knowers,
That's awesome.
But anyways, it's a good story. Even if you don't believe that story, it's still a good story. It's hard to even believe that all those circumstances that was involved in the situation, that I can't believe it either. You have 3 Bigfoots and you have 3 people on each side of the teams, all the way from that point, and then the point where my sister and her boyfriend decided to go crawling out in the grass, and then left me there, visualizing just 2 other figures sitting there. I just can't believe how that even happened. I didn't even see them come up and they got themselves in that position in the first place. Those 2 of the Bigfoots that were sitting there. You know what I'm saying?
Whenever I was a researcher and used to go out in the field looking for these things, we used to talk about how nothing is perfect. And sometimes these things make mistakes. Sometimes they slip up. And I believe that night they slipped up. There was no anticipation of 6 kids hiding out in the dark. There was, they didn't know that y'all were out there playing guns or whatever and hiding along that fence line, and they just slipped up.
Well, and the funny thing was that they're probably on that same path. They've probably been through that same path where they had to they're walking through that field if they did it many other times or whatever. The fact is, we trapped them.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, now you just mentioned that this is the first time I ever thought about that. I didn't think that we actually trapped them in between. We were basically we were on each side of their pathways.
I mean, which other direction could they go?
Yeah, they couldn't.
Yeah.
I didn't think, of course, I didn't think about the aspect of us actually trapping them where they were at, because my team went around the other side of the school anyways on the street and came that way. So if those Bigfoots were probably right there hiding right there on the side of the school anyways.
Where there aren't any lights.
Yeah, where there's no lights right there. So when we ran past them, probably in front of that school, and went around the other side, getting over to the far other side of the field, we were actually entrapping them. Being my other team being on the other side over at the apartments right in between, and they had to walk in between us.
If they knew you were there before they saw you, or before you saw them rather, they probably thought, give them some time, they'll leave out of the area or whatever. It's nighttime, kids aren't here at nighttime, and they thought you had left the area because you guys hunkered down and hid and got quiet, you know?
And even at the point when they were looking at me when I was right there at the fence line right there, they even probably knew that I wasn't like a full grown man either, you know?
Oh, for sure.
They probably had a sense that we were not like kids, you know, these young kids, but they probably had a feeling that we definitely weren't no threat, because they were pretty quiet anyways, for one thing. But I guarantee you that those two that were sitting there definitely knew where I was at, especially with me whispering back at him, trying to tell him to be quiet, you know?
But then you also have the variable of your sister and her boyfriend hiding off in the grass, giggling and cutting up with one another. And they may not have seen them. They may not have had their location. They might have been younger than the other ones. The other ones the one that ran up on you might have been the one in charge. They could have been two juveniles with an adult.
Yeah, that's what kind of like what we look at too, is I know that was definitely the more the aggressor of the three, even though it wasn't showing the aggression. It's just it was the one that was more in charge, it looked like to me.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack with your encounter. A lot.
Believe me, even to this day, all through the years, I've written my own journals anyway, so that's why I remember everybody's names and stuff. I remember the two brothers' names. I remember my sister's boyfriend's name. Now my brother, he can't remember any of their names because this situation didn't dramatize him like it did me. And so I kept a lot of this information that I knew because I was always thinking about it throughout the years. And I've written journals myself without showing it. I didn't show anybody, even my brother. I said, screw that, I'm not even showing this. And that's what I used to actually help write my book as well, as I just went through my journals and stuff. And then, and remembering, and then when we were reading that stuff, you're just remembering every detail, you know, that's going on. And so that's where I'm at with that too, you know. It's just a crazy deal.
And if you have had your own encounter with Bigfoot and you'd like to share your story on the podcast, email me at bigfootcrossroads@gmail.com. Check out the website, bigfootcrossroads.com. You can find links to social media, past episodes, merchandise, everything you need, all in one place. And until next time, remember, there's something in the woods.